"I don't care what you say. You stole that card, and I'm calling the police." The voice of Scarlett Ashford, the store manager, sliced through the air, sharp and cold. It echoed through the electronics store, a weapon aimed at a terrified child. The little girl, Zahra Nightingale, could barely breathe through her sobs. "Please," she pleaded, her tiny voice breaking with fear. "I didn't steal it." Chaos erupted around them. Customers pulled out their phones, fingers flying across screens to hit record. "That child doesn't belong here," one woman scoffed. "Someone call the police," another demanded. From the gaming section, a voice muttered, "This is insane." But no one in the crowded store, least of all Scarlett Ashford herself, could have known the truth. In exactly 23 minutes, the manager's world would not just be shaken. It would be utterly obliterated by the identity of the little girl's mother. The events unfolding were not a simple misunderstanding. They were the first tremors of a story of justice that would soon captivate millions. It had all begun just 45 minutes earlier when an innocent 8-year-old girl walked into that store, her heart full of excitement for her upcoming birthday and her hands full of her mother's trust. To understand how such a moment could fracture so violently, one must first understand the people caught in its storm. Zahra Nightingale was 8 years old, dressed in a pink dress with matching sneakers that lit up with every step. She was remarkably bright for her age, a child who could hold conversations with adults, her curiosity a constant stream of thoughtful questions. She lived with her single mother and, like most children, was fascinated by technology. But Zahra didn't just want to play games, she wanted to understand how they worked. She dreamed of being just like her mommy when she grew up. That day, she walked into Tech World Electronics clutching her mother's Black American Express card, brimming with the grown-up responsibility of choosing her own birthday tablet. The woman about to shatter that innocent world was Scarlett Ashford. At 45, she was the store manager, a title she had held for 15 long, bitter years. Scarlett wasn't just having a bad day. She was drowning in a bad life. A recent divorce had compounded her financial stress, and she had begun to take her frustrations out on the world, especially on families that seemed to have the happiness she felt she'd been denied. Over the years, she had cultivated a set of ugly prejudices, viewing black families through a lens of suspicion that had festered for far too long. Meanwhile, in a boardroom just 20 minutes across town, Zahra's mother was making history. Celeste Nightingale wasn't just any concerned parent. At 38, she was the CEO and founder of Nightingale Enterprises, a technology company worth over $2 billion. Elegant and composed, Celeste commanded respect in every room she entered. Her success had not been handed to her. She had built her empire from nothing, driven by sheer determination and brilliance. Despite her power, she kept her family life intensely private, shielding Zahra from the spotlight to give her as normal a childhood as possible. Back at the store, Scarlett was not acting alone. Her assistant manager, Dante Morrow, had long ago learned that agreeing with Scarlett was the path of least resistance. Behind the register, a young cashier named Aubrey Delacroix watched with a knot in her stomach. Aubrey had younger siblings of her own and knew this was wrong, but she was terrified of losing her job if she spoke up. None of them knew they were about to become unwilling actors in a drama that would be viewed by millions, sparking a national conversation about prejudice and proving that justice can arrive in the most unexpected of ways. The glass doors of Tech World Electronics slid open at precisely 2:15 in the afternoon, admitting a small figure with the biggest smile on her face. 8-year-old Zahra Nightingale practically bounced into the store, her light-up sneakers flashing with each step. In her small hands, she clutched her mother's credit card as if it were treasure. She had been dreaming of this moment for weeks, the day she would get to pick out her very own birthday tablet, just like a grown-up. But from the moment she entered, she was being watched. From her post at the customer service counter, Scarlett Ashford's eyes locked onto the unaccompanied black child. To Scarlett, the girl was not a beacon of innocent excitement. She was an anomaly, a suspicion taking root in the barren soil of a bitter mind. Zahra, oblivious to the hostile stare, skipped over to the tablet display. Her eyes widened at the rows of colorful devices, a candy store of technology. She approached the counter where Aubrey Delacroix was organizing inventory. "Excuse me, miss," she said, her voice sweet and polite. "Could you please help me find a tablet for learning and games?" Aubrey's heart melted. The little girl was adorable, speaking so clearly and respectfully. Smiling, Aubrey began explaining the different models, pointing out the best options for educational apps and gaming. Zahra's excitement was infectious. She bounced on her toes, asking surprisingly sharp questions about memory storage and battery life. When Aubrey showed her a sleek, silver tablet with a purple case, Zahra's eyes lit up. "This one is perfect," she exclaimed, clapping her hands. "It's exactly what I wanted." That pure moment of joy was shattered by the heavy, purposeful footsteps approaching from behind. Scarlett Ashford had been observing the entire interaction, and in her twisted view the picture was all wrong. A black child, alone, discussing expensive electronics. Her racist assumptions went into overdrive. "Where are your parents, little girl?" Scarlett demanded. Her tone was sharp, accusatory. Zahra looked up, confusion clouding her innocent eyes. "My mommy is at work," she replied politely. "She gave me permission to come shopping for my birthday. She even gave me her special card." Any reasonable person would have accepted the explanation, but Scarlett's mind was already made up. "Let me see that card," she commanded, holding out her hand as if to a criminal. Trusting, Zahra handed over the black American Express card. When Scarlett saw it, her expression curdled. It was a premium card, a symbol of a wealth that, in her prejudiced mind, this child could not possibly have legitimate access to. "Where did you get this?" Scarlett's voice grew louder, drawing the attention of other customers. "Mommy gave it to me," Zahra repeated, uncertainty now creeping into her voice. She could feel that something was deeply wrong. "What's your mother's name? Where does she work? How do I know you didn't steal this?" The questions were a rapid-fire assault. Zahra's lower lip began to tremble. "I'm not supposed to tell strangers about Mommy's work. But I didn't steal anything. Mommy says I'm a good girl." Nearby, customers began to notice. An elderly man looked over with concern. A young couple paused their conversation. And Indigo Blackwell, shopping with her own 2 children, felt a protective instinct flare as she watched the interrogation. Aubrey, the cashier, finally tried to intervene. "Ma'am, maybe we should just call the number on the card to verify." "I'll handle this," Scarlett snapped, cutting her off. Zahra, now shaking, pulled out a small pink cell phone. "I can call my mommy," she offered, her voice small. "She'll tell you it's okay." "Go ahead and try," Scarlett said with a smirk, convinced this would prove her right. With trembling fingers, Zahra dialed. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times, then went to voicemail. At that exact moment, Celeste Nightingale was in her boardroom, phone on silent, presenting a merger proposal that would reshape the tech industry. She had trusted her mature daughter with a simple errand, never imagining the venom she would face. "Mommy's phone went to the message thing," Zahra whispered, looking up at Scarlett with wide, frightened eyes. This was all the proof Scarlett needed. "Of course it did," she announced loudly for the benefit of the gathering crowd. "Because you don't have permission to use this card, do you?" "I'm not lying," Zahra protested, tears welling. "Mommy really did give it to me." But Scarlett was just getting started. She raised her voice, ensuring everyone could hear. "Young lady, I believe you took this card without permission. That makes you a thief. I'm going to have to call the police." The word police struck Zahra like a physical blow. The 8-year-old girl who had never been in trouble in her life was being accused of a crime in a store full of strangers. The tears finally spilled over, hot and fast. "I'm not a thief," she cried, her voice breaking. "I'm a good girl, I promise." By now, a small crowd had formed. Some looked on with concern, but others began to nod in agreement with the manager. "You're right to be careful," one man said to Scarlett. "Kids these days will steal anything." "Where are her parents anyway?" a woman chimed in. "What kind of mother lets a child shop alone?" Zahra heard every word. The weight of their judgment, their suspicion, was crushing her. "I want my mommy," she sobbed, hugging herself as if to disappear. That was when Scarlett, instead of showing an ounce of compassion, doubled down on her cruelty. "Your mommy isn't here to save you," she sneered. "Now you're going to tell me the truth, or I'm calling security to have you removed." The few customers who had been sympathetic fell silent. A line had been crossed, a shift from suspicion to outright cruelty. Scarlett, consumed by years of bitterness and prejudice, was now directing it all at one small, innocent child. It was the moment that would seal her fate. Zahra was at her breaking point, surrounded by hostile adults questioning her honesty, her character, her very right to be there, her spirit fractured. I want my mommy, she cried again, her voice a desperate plea echoing through the store. She was no longer just crying. She was sobbing with the kind of primal heartbreak only a child can know when the adult world turns on them. Her small body shook as she looked at the faces that were supposed to offer protection, not terror. And that is when Scarlett Ashford lost the last vestiges of her humanity. Seeing not a frightened child but an obstacle to her authority, she screamed, "Stop that crying right now!" But Zahra couldn't stop. Scared and confused, she did what any child would do. She reached out for the nearest adult, her small hand moving toward Scarlett's arm, not in defiance, but in a desperate search for comfort. Then, a sharp, ugly sound cracked through the tense silence, the sound of a hand striking flesh. The slap was so hard, so vicious, it left a bright red handprint blooming across the left side of Zahra's small face. The force of it sent her stumbling backward, her eyes wide with a shock that was deeper than pain. For a split second, the store fell utterly silent. Time froze as every person in the room processed the horrifying truth of what they had just seen. A grown woman, a manager, had just struck an 8-year-old child. Then, all hell broke loose. "Oh my God, she hit her!" a woman screamed. "Call the police!" another voice shouted. "Are you insane?" a man yelled at Scarlett. "She's just a baby." But the most crucial action was happening quietly, in the corner. Indigo Blackwell, who had been recording the entire escalation on her phone, had captured it all. The accusation, the crying, the slap. Without a moment's hesitation, she began uploading the video to every social media platform she knew. Within minutes, the footage would begin its inexorable spread across the internet, a digital wildfire that no one could ever hope to contain. The sound of the slap was a crack of thunder in the sterile quiet of the electronics store. For a moment, no one moved. Then, as if a spell had been broken, Aubrey Delacroix abandoned her register. Her employee training manual had no section for a manager assaulting a child, but her own humanity was a far more reliable guide. She rushed to the traumatized little girl, her heart aching at the sight. "Hey, sweetie." "Hey, it's okay," Aubrey whispered, kneeling down. She gently wrapped her arms around the sobbing child. "You're safe now. I've got you." Zahra collapsed into her embrace, her small body trembling with a shock that went far deeper than the sting on her cheek. The red handprint was already beginning to swell, a brutal testament to her supposed crime, being a child in the wrong place at the wrong time. Phoenix Sterling, the security guard, had watched the ugly scene unfold from across the store. He hurried over, his face a mask of conflict. But when his manager, Scarlett, barked an order to remove the disruptive child, he froze, trapped between his duty and his conscience. Scarlett, however, was far beyond reason. Adrenaline coursed through her, stoking a dark, cruel fire. Instead of remorse, she felt a surge of self-righteousness. "Get her out of here now," she announced to the growing crowd of horrified customers. "She was causing a scene and she's probably a thief. I had every right to discipline her when her parents obviously haven't." The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. She had just struck an 8-year-old and was now painting herself as the victim. The onlookers were a study in human nature. Some were openly horrified, demanding that someone call the police. Others stood in uncomfortable silence, their desire to avoid a scene overriding their moral compass. And then, there were the others. The ones who looked at a crying child with a red mark on her face and nodded in agreement. "Kids need discipline," one woman muttered as she passed. "Maybe now she'll learn not to steal," another added with a smug smirk. But while the adults revealed their true character, Zahra was lost in a world of pain and confusion she could not comprehend. Curled in Aubrey's arms, her small voice repeated the same heartbreaking question. "Why did she hit me? I want my mommy. I didn't do anything bad. Why did the mean lady hit me?" Each word was a dagger to the heart of every decent person there. An adult, a figure who was supposed to represent safety, had become a source of terror. "You didn't do anything wrong, sweetheart," Aubrey whispered, stroking her hair. "That lady was very, very wrong. You're a good girl, and your mommy is going to be so proud of how brave you are." It was then that Dante Moreau, the assistant manager, arrived, drawn by the commotion. He saw the crowd, the crying child, the furious manager, and his face went white. This wasn't a customer service issue. This was a lawsuit, a public relations nightmare, a crime. What happened here? Dante demanded, though the mark on Zahra's face told the story plainly enough. I disciplined a disruptive child who was probably shoplifting, Scarlett said, her tone devoid of shame, as if it were just another part of her job. Dante's eyes widened in horror. He knew his store, his company, and his own career were balanced on a knife's edge. But Scarlett wasn't finished. Instead of calling for medical help, instead of reporting the incident to corporate, she pulled out her phone and dialed 911. Yes, I need police at Tech World Electronics immediately, she said, her voice dripping with authority. I have a child here who is out of control and I need her removed. The arrogance was stunning. She had just assaulted a minor and was now calling the police to report the victim, utterly convinced that the authorities would arrive and arrest an 8-year-old child. While Scarlett was on the phone, Aubrey helped Zahra try her mother's number again. The little girl's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone, but through her tears, she managed to dial the main office number her mother had taught her to use for emergencies. It rang twice before a calm, professional voice answered. Nightingale Enterprises. This is Margaret speaking. Margaret Chen, Celeste's executive assistant, recognized the sound of her boss's daughter crying, and her blood ran cold. Margaret, it's Zahra, the little girl sobbed. A mean lady hit me, and I'm scared, and I want my mommy. In 3 years working for Celeste Nightingale, Margaret had never heard anything more terrifying. Celeste was in the most important meeting of her career, but Margaret knew that nothing on earth mattered more than her daughter's safety. Zahra, sweetheart, where are you? Are you hurt? Margaret asked, already rushing toward the boardroom. I'm at the computer store, and my face hurts. And I just want to go home, Zahra cried. Margaret didn't knock. She burst through the boardroom doors as if the building were on fire, interrupting a meeting with some of the most powerful people in the tech industry. Celeste, you need to come now, she announced, her voice cutting through the presentation. It's Zahra. She's in trouble at a store. Someone hurt her. The room fell silent. Every executive watched as Celeste Nightingale's face transformed from composed CEO to terrified mother. What do you mean someone hurt her? Celeste's voice was deadly quiet, the calm before a hurricane. She called crying, Margaret said, her voice trembling slightly. She said a lady hit her at an electronics store. She's scared. Celeste was already moving before Margaret finished speaking. Which store? Tech World Electronics on 5th Street. Call my security team, Celeste commanded, grabbing her keys. Call my lawyers, cancel everything. Someone had just made the biggest mistake of their life. Back at the store, the distant wail of sirens grew closer. Scarlett smiled, believing her vindication was at hand. She had no idea she had just summoned the authorities to the scene of her own crime. 23 minutes. That was how long it took for Scarlett Ashford's world to come crashing down. The sirens were still a block away when a black luxury SUV screeched into the parking lot, tires smoking as it stopped abruptly in front of the entrance. The driver's door flew open and a woman emerged who moved with the force of a tidal wave. Celeste Nightingale was wearing a tailored navy suit that cost more than a month's rent. But this wasn't CEO Celeste. This was a mother bear, and there is no force on earth more dangerous. The automatic doors slid open and she swept inside, her eyes scanning the chaos until they found their target. Her 8-year-old daughter curled up in a stranger's arms, a bright red handprint blazing across her left cheek. Zahra? Celeste's voice cut through the noise. Mommy! Zahra cried, scrambling from Aubrey's lap and running into her mother's arms. Celeste dropped to her knees, clutching her daughter tight. I'm here, baby. Mommy's here, she whispered, her thumb gently tracing the swollen mark. Her gaze lifted, cold and sharp. Who did this to you? Scarlett, still oblivious, marched over. Finally showed up, did you? Your daughter has been disrupting my store, probably trying to steal, and when I tried to discipline her, she became hysterical. The store fell silent. Celeste slowly rose to her feet, one protective arm around Zahra. When she turned to face Scarlett, her voice was terrifyingly calm. You disciplined my daughter? You put your hands on my child? She had a credit card that obviously wasn't hers, Scarlett replied smugly. I had every right to maintain order. Just then, 2 police officers walked in. Officer Rodriguez took one look at the scene, the furious manager, the powerful-looking woman, and the crying child with a visible injury, and knew this was no routine call. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to see some identification," he said respectfully to Celeste. Celeste handed him her driver's license and a business card. "Celeste Nightingale, CEO of Nightingale Enterprises. And this is my daughter, who has just been assaulted." Officer Rodriguez's eyes widened. He knew the name. Everyone in the city did. Across the store, Dante Moreau looked up from his frantic call and saw the business card change hands. The name, the face from Fortune magazine. It all clicked into place. The blood drained from Dante's face. He knew something Scarlett didn't. He knew exactly who owned the building. Tech World Electronics was merely a tenant in the Pinnacle shopping complex, a property owned by Nightingale Real Estate Holdings, a subsidiary of Nightingale Enterprises. Scarlett Ashford had just assaulted her own landlord's daughter. "Ma'am, can you describe what happened?" Officer Rodriguez asked Celeste. "According to multiple witnesses and at least one video," Celeste replied, her voice like steel, "your store manager struck my 8-year-old daughter across the face." "Ma'am, did you strike this child?" Rodriguez asked Scarlett directly. "I disciplined her appropriately," she insisted. "So you admit to striking a minor?" Dante finally found his voice, rushing forward with his hands shaking. "Miss Nightingale, I am so sorry. Scarlett was acting completely outside of company policy." "Dante, what are you doing?" Scarlett snapped. "Scarlett, shut up," Dante hissed. "Do you have any idea who this is?" "Some entitled parent?" she sneered. "This is Celeste Nightingale, as in the company that owns this entire shopping complex, as in our landlord." The color drained from Scarlett's face. Still, her pride refused to yield. "Well, how was I supposed to know that? She should have said something." "Let me understand this," Celeste said, her voice dropping to a glacial calm. "You admit to striking my daughter, and your defense is that you didn't know I was wealthy?" "I was just doing my job." Officer Rodriguez had heard enough. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for assault on a minor." The words hung in the air, a death sentence for Scarlett's career. But getting arrested was only the beginning. What happened next was a masterclass in the exercise of real power. While Officer Rodriguez was reading Scarlett her rights, Celeste seamlessly shifted from protective mother to ruthless CEO. She kept one hand on Zahra's shoulder, a constant source of comfort, while taking complete command of the situation. "Officer, I want to see the security footage of this incident immediately," Celeste stated. It was not a request. Dante practically tripped over himself, rushing to the security office. "Of course, Miss Nightingale, right away." The monitor flickered to life, showing the entire ugly event from multiple angles. Celeste watched in cold silence. Zahra's initial excitement, Scarlett's predatory surveillance, the confrontation, and then the moment that made her jaw clench with a fury so profound it was almost serene. The slap. She watched it 3 times, memorizing every detail, building her case with the precision that had toppled corporate rivals. When she finally looked up, her expression was one that had made hardened executives resign. "Thank you," she said to the sweating Dante. "Now get your regional manager on the phone." "Miss Nightingale, I'm sure we can handle—" "You had your chance to handle this when your employee assaulted my daughter," Celeste cut him off. "Make the call." When Dante finally connected to the regional office, Celeste took the phone from his trembling hand and put it on speaker. "This is Celeste Nightingale, CEO of Nightingale Enterprises. I'm calling to inform you that your store manager, Scarlett Ashford, has just committed felony assault on my 8-year-old daughter at your 5th Street location." The voice on the other end was instantly deferential. "Miss Nightingale, I am so sorry. We will investigate this immediately." "There is nothing to investigate," Celeste interrupted smoothly. "I have video evidence, a dozen witnesses, and a police report being filed as we speak. You will terminate Scarlett Ashford's employment, effective immediately." "Of course. Yes, consider it done." "You will also demote Dante Moreau and transfer him to your lowest performing store for his failure to intervene." Dante's face went ashen as his career imploded. "Furthermore," Celeste continued, her voice echoing through the silent store, "as the owner of this property, I'm implementing new mandatory de-escalation and anti-bias training protocols for all tenant businesses. My legal team will be in touch. Any employee who discriminates against a customer based on race, age, or appearance will be permanently banned from working in any establishment on my properties." The regional manager's voice, tinny through the speakerphone, was a cascade of stammered agreement. "Yes, Ms. Nightingale, of course. Whatever you deem appropriate. We are so profoundly sorry." While this corporate demolition was underway, Officer Rodriguez was concluding Scarlett's arrest. The disgraced former manager stood in handcuffs, her face a mask of disbelief, just moments from being escorted to a waiting police car. But then, a new presence announced itself outside. 3 black SUVs, their windows tinted to an impenetrable sheen, had pulled up to the curb. Doors opened in unison and men in dark tailored suits emerged. They moved with a synchronized professional grace, speaking quietly into their earpieces as their eyes methodically scanned the entire area. One of them entered the store, his gaze finding Celeste immediately. "Ms. Nightingale," he announced, his voice calm and clear, "your security detail has arrived." And it was true. In the moment she was driving to the store, Celeste had made the call. When you are worth billions of dollars and someone has laid a hand on your child, you leave nothing to chance. But her personal security wasn't the only backup arriving. News vans were now maneuvering for position outside, local reporters scrambling from their vehicles, drawn by the digital scent of a major story. Social media had already done its work. Indigo's video of Scarlett striking Zahra had gone supernova, exploding across every conceivable platform. "The video has over 2 million views," Indigo reported, her phone still up, documenting every second. "Justice for Zahra is trending nationwide." The look on Scarlett's face as she absorbed this was a masterpiece of dawning horror. The realization that her fleeting act of cruelty was now a spectacle for millions, that her name was becoming synonymous with child abuse, that this single moment would follow her forever. It all crashed down on her at once. "This is insane," she protested, her voice shrill, as Officer Rodriguez gently guided her toward the doors. "All of this, over one little incident?" She was a disruptive noise, but no one was listening anymore. All around them, customers were raising their phones, a forest of small screens eager to capture her downfall. A voice from the crowd rang out, "That's her! That's the woman who hit the little girl!" More phones appeared, more videos began to roll. Scarlett Ashford's perp walk was about to go as viral as the assault itself. As the officers moved her through the store, Celeste held up a hand, stopping them. She stepped forward, looking directly into Scarlett's eyes. Her voice was quiet, yet it carried the weight of absolute authority, cutting through the ambient noise. "You put your hands on my 8-year-old daughter," Celeste said, each word a carefully placed stone. "You traumatized a child because of your own prejudice. I want you to understand that the consequences you are facing now are only the beginning. My lawyers will be filing both criminal and civil charges. You will never work in this industry again, and for the rest of your life, when anyone searches your name, this is what they will find." Scarlett opened her mouth to speak, but Celeste was not finished. "More importantly, you need to understand that what you did today was not just an attack on my child. It was an attack on every child of color who has been made to feel unwelcome, on every family treated with suspicion. The world is watching now, Scarlett. And they are about to see what happens when people like you believe they can get away with it." The officers resumed their escort, but Scarlett twisted back one last time, desperation cracking her voice. "I was just doing my job. I didn't know who she was." "That," Celeste replied, her voice dropping to ice, "is precisely the problem. You didn't know who she was, and in your mind, that made her a criminal. But here is the lesson for today. We are somebody. We matter. And when you hurt one of us, especially one of our children, there will be consequences." As Scarlett was finally pushed through the store's exit, a sound began. It started with a single person clapping, then another and another. It grew into a wave of applause that filled the entire store. They were applauding justice. They were applauding a mother who had protected her child. They were applauding the rare, satisfying sight of the right person being held accountable. Outside, news cameras captured every angle of Scarlett being placed in the police car. The story was already breaking on national news. Inside the store, however, Celeste's focus had shifted from retribution to reconstruction. She turned to Aubrey, the young cashier who had been the only one to offer Zahra comfort. "What's your name?" Celeste asked gently. "Aubrey, ma'am. Aubrey Delacroix." "Aubrey," Celeste said, a genuine warmth in her voice. "You showed incredible compassion and courage today. I won't forget that." She reached into her purse and produced a business card. "I'm promoting you to temporary store manager, effective immediately." Aubrey's eyes widened. "Effective? Immediately?" with a $50,000 salary increase. And if you're interested in a permanent role within my company, call my assistant tomorrow. Tears welled in Aubrey's eyes. In the span of an hour, she had gone from a minimum wage cashier to a store manager, all for simply doing the right thing. Justice had been served. And little Zahra, who had entered the store a victim, was now leaving it with the unshakable knowledge that her mother would move heaven and earth for her, and that good people still walked the earth. But this story was far from over. What happened in that store was about to ignite a national conversation about discrimination, accountability, and what real consequences look like when someone finally has the power to enforce them. 2 hours later, 8-year-old Zahra Nightingale sat in her favorite ice cream parlor, a double scoop of strawberry melting before her. The red mark on her cheek had begun to fade, but the confusion in her eyes remained. Celeste watched her daughter from across the small table, observing the careful, hesitant way she moved her spoon. As a CEO, Celeste navigated hostile boardrooms and billion-dollar negotiations without flinching. But this, explaining the ugliness of the world to her child, was the most difficult task she had ever faced. "Mommy," Zahra asked, her voice small, "why was that lady so mean to me? I didn't do anything." Celeste felt her heart fracture all over again. How do you explain racism to a child who has only known a world where adults were safe? "Oh, baby, you did nothing wrong," Celeste said, her voice soft as she reached across the table to cover her daughter's hand with her own. "That lady, she made a very bad choice. It came from mean ideas she has inside her about people who look like us. Some people think they can judge you just by the color of your skin, and that is never, ever okay. But she thought I was stealing. I had your special card." "I know. It's because some people have been taught wrong things. They see a beautiful, smart little girl like you, and instead of seeing how wonderful you are, they see something else. Something they're afraid of. It isn't fair, and it isn't right." Zahra processed this, her young mind grappling with concepts that baffled most adults. "So, she was mean because I'm black? That's part of it, yes. But sweetheart, listen to me very carefully. Her meanness says nothing about you. It says everything about her. You are perfect just the way you are. You are brilliant and kind and so, so brave. No one ever has the right to make you feel like you are less than that." As they talked, the story of Zahra's terror tumbled out. The fear, the confusion, the accusing stares from other adults as she tried to buy a simple birthday present. "I was so scared, Mommy. I kept calling for you in my head." "I know, baby, and I am so sorry I wasn't there in that moment. But do you know what I saw on that video? I saw a very brave girl. You stood up for yourself. You told the truth, and you never gave up. That takes a special kind of strength." "Really?" A small smile touched Zahra's lips. "Really? You have something inside you that is stronger than any mean person's words, and nothing can ever take that away." While this quiet conversation was happening over ice cream, a much louder one was erupting across the country. The video had become a catalyst, sparking a national dialogue about the treatment of black children in public spaces and what true accountability should look like. But Celeste was not content to let the conversation exist only on the internet. She began to use her immense power to forge lasting change. Within a week, every business operating on a Nightingale Enterprises property was mandated to undergo comprehensive anti-discrimination training. But she went further. She implemented what the media would later call the Zahra protocols, specific safety measures to protect children in retail. No child under 16 could be questioned without a parent present. No employee could physically touch a minor. Any report of discrimination would trigger an immediate, high-level investigation. The Zahra Nightingale Scholarship for Young Innovators was established, providing full college funding for students who demonstrated both academic excellence and a commitment to fighting for social justice. Within 5 years, it would send over 1,000 deserving kids to college. And in an unexpected turn, Indigo Blackwell, the woman who filmed the video, became a powerful advocate in her own right. Her organization, Witness and Act, trained people on how to safely intervene when they saw a child being mistreated. "Silence is complicity," she would often say in interviews. When an adult is harming a child, feeling bad isn't enough. You have to do something. As for Scarlett Ashford, the consequences were as swift as they were severe. Charged with felony assault on a minor, her name and face were now permanently linked to the viral video. She was, for all intents and purposes, unemployable. She had tried to intimidate an 8-year-old girl and had instead discovered that the world was watching. But this story isn't about Scarlett's ruin. It's about Zahra's rise. 6 months after the incident, Zahra came to her mother with an idea. "Mommy," she said one evening, "I want to make an app, one that helps kids when grown-ups are being mean." Celeste smiled, recognizing the same spark of innovation that had built her empire. "Tell me more, sweetheart." "It could have a button that records everything, like Ms. Indigo did for me, and it could send an alert to their parents or a nice police officer, and maybe a map with safe places for kids to go if they get scared." Working together, mother and daughter brought the idea to life. They created the Kindness app, a simple, powerful tool for children. Zahra insisted on its key features: a courage button that played encouraging messages from other kids, a section that taught children about their rights, and a secure reporting system. The app launched on Zahra's 9th birthday. Within months, it had been downloaded by millions of families around the world. It was used to document bullying, report discrimination, and give a voice to children who felt they had none. Its success was a testament to what Celeste had told her daughter over ice cream. True strength is not found in revenge, but in using your pain to help others. Zahra's story evolved from a viral moment of injustice into a powerful symbol of resilience. The measured way Celeste had responded, not with blind rage, but with systemic, protective change, became a case study in responsible leadership. And Scarlett? She was still out there trying to explain away a video that the internet would never let her forget. But in the end, the story was never about her punishment. It was about a little girl who refused to let one person's hatred dim her light. A girl who transformed her trauma into a tool for change, and who proved that even the smallest voice, when it speaks the truth, can change the world. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share so that others can learn too. We'll see you in our next video.